The Talk Station presents Faith Matters, a look at contemporary stories and issues from a faith perspective. While this is a pre-recorded show, we are interested in your ideas, comments, and questions, and we urge you to email them to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life.
And now on the Talk Station, Faith Matters.
And welcome to another show. We're glad to have you here with us here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station. And I'm Ben Ball, pastor Broad Creek United Methodist Church in Broad Creek off Highway 24. And get a plug in because I need all the plugs I can get. And then also Reverend Robert Cornegie from Chapel by the Sea, somewhere over there in Emerald Isle on the island. And then also from St. Peter's United Methodist Church, Reverend Carl Zarowski and Dr. Bob Wilson, the author of Nullifying God. I get everybody right? All right.
Amen. You got it right,
All
Don.
right.
Good job today.
Good job. Okay, that's a rarity. All right, let's talk about some of the things that are before us today, and then as we intersect faith in the public square. This is a subject that we've talked about before because the law has been out there in California, but it's now being challenged, has been challenged this week, arguments before the Supreme Court. In its article from the Washington Post, Supreme Court questions California law requiring anti-abortion centers to disclose that the state provides abortion services. The Supreme Court justices on Tuesday indicated that a California law requiring abortion pregnancy centers in California to notify women that the state provides free or low-cost health care, contraception services, and abortion could violate free speech rights. Even some of the court's liberal justices were concerned that the state had drawn the law to target clinics that encourage women to continue their pregnancies and subjected only them to the requirements. All right, so Robert, you've been following this subject for a while because you work closely with the Coastal Pregnancy Care Center.
Correct.
And this is a concern because this law in California would force the pregnancy centers to tell people to go somewhere else.
That's right. That's exactly right.
In a sense.
Yeah. And well, that's part of it.
Right.
You know, I think the major element here that's being debated is this whole free speech issue. You know, and how can a state come into an organization, whether it's a business or in our case a nonprofit, and dictate what they are to say to people who come there looking for services from that center.
Who come there voluntarily.
Voluntarily, that's exactly right. That's a great point. And so, that's the debate. They've never gotten down in the weeds like this before. And it's interesting that it's happening in California, obviously, because California is the state of California is very strident in their support of abortions. And they've taken that on as a plank in their platform, for quite a while. So with the present administration, they are pushing the process, and this comes out of, frankly, a reaction to what has been going on in the news for probably 5 years with these videos that are being released, these undercover videos,
right? And
they're exposing what's going on in the Planned Parenthood and other abortion centers. And so this is a reaction back, a backlash against that. So they're trying to do anything they can to make providing well counseled decisions to women about it. We talk about abortion.
Yeah, and you were saying before we started that sometimes these arguments and even the arguments from those who are for the California law, and even some from the justices, look like they don't understand what goes on.
I don't think they really don't have a clue what goes. They think that this kind of is like a forbidden subject, but it's not. It's talked about with the women who are looking at their options. And we talk about, the consequences of this. What are the consequences of these decisions? And so we work through that. And so it isn't like we're not doing. What we don't do is to say that you can go down the street to such and such clinic and get an abortion. We don't do that, and that's look. They have their own advertising budgets. They don't need to make us do that for them.
Well, one of the interesting things, both Carl and Dr. Bob, is that apparently this law had a general application, but had a lot of carve-outs in it. Is one of the things that they're arguing, and so it was even Justice Elena Kagan, considered one of the more liberal justices, who said that sounds like it's been gerrymandered. Sounds like it is paying more attention to only particular things. She said that would mean the state is saying we have these general disclosure requirements, but we really don't want to apply them generally. We just want to apply them to some speakers whose speech we don't much like.
Well, I think, the thing there is that you get back to this whole issue about the state dictating what we are to say, what we are not to say. And this is an inroad into that, as well as applying it to abortion. But the thing is that the justices either ignore the biology of what goes on at conception, or they don't care to know it, or they are ignorant of it, because really it's been shown time and time and time again that that a human being forms the moment that sperm enters an egg. Human being, not a person. That's a very different thing. Yeah, I know. I see you moving your hands, Robert. But, we can call it a person, but let's just take it at a neutral level, at the biology level. That is a human being. It is not a rat. It is not a monkey. It is not anything else. And left on its own, that human being will live out its natural life until natural death. So the thing is, you are terminating the life of a human being. That's what it comes down to, abortion. So why should a group who is trying to counsel women say, now, we're counseling you this, but we have to tell you that abortion services are available, the state is providing them? That is just flat out wrong.
The argument from the political side and the free speech side, again, and looking at what's the Supreme Court of the United States blog, says that arguing on behalf of the senators, Attorney Michael Ferris quickly ran into questions from several of the court's more liberal justices that boiled down to what Justice Stephen Breyer dubbed what is sauce for the goose is sauce for the gander. If a state that opposes abortion can require a doctor who performs abortions to tell a pregnant woman about the possibility of abortion, why can't a state that supports abortion rights require a doctor to tell a pregnant woman about the availability of free or low-cost abortions? So it's like a disclosure, like a real estate disclosure statement. It says that you that these folks who counsel ought to be forced to provide disclosure about other terms.
Well, the pro-life centers, they are not government funded, correct?
Correct.
Right.
They are all nonprofit.
Correct.
Okay. And that's where the issue really comes in to play here for me is, if I'm setting up this nonprofit organization and I'm trying to help people make choices, and I'm not accepting any government funding whatsoever, then should the government be able to come in and force me to do certain things? Okay. Now, there was stuff in the article about how some of these people were really more of counselors and not actually medical personnel. Okay. I get that. All right. If I were a licensed doctor, and I was licensed with the state, then I can understand the state having a little bit of say over what I do. But if I'm just a volunteer working in an organization trying to help a young person who's in a very difficult spot to wrestle with a very difficult decision, should the government really come in and tell me what I have to say?
No, it shouldn't. And that's the point. This is why this has gotten all the way to the Supreme Court. Because we're talking about fundamental constitutional rights here. This is it's not only a free speech right, it's a religious right as well. Living out your beliefs.
Right. And are we going to get to a point that the government can come in and say to a church, yes, you can preach about Jesus all you want, but you also need to tell people that you don't have to believe, that there are other options available for you. And by the way, we want you to post this, and we want you to post it in 14 different languages so that everybody can read it.
Yeah, that's right. There's a mosque. There's a mosque down the road, and here's the address. Right. Here's the imam's phone number. Literally, that's what they're doing. And like you said, Ben, what they've done. I mean, it's obvious that they have targeted a certain area of this response. They're going after Christian pregnancy centers.
Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and obviously we know that she's on the more liberal side of the justices there too. She asked a question of the California attorney Klein, said, had California ever filed charges against the Center for False and Misleading Advertising? Klein reported that the state had not.
There's no injury.
They're creating a problem where there isn't one.
Well, exactly. That's right. Yeah. Do they have standing on this? I mean, this is, that's usually when you go through these things, you're looking for people that have suffered some injury by not. I mean, it isn't as though people don't know that their state has abortion programs. I mean, it's ridiculous, really.
Yeah, even the newest justice in Gorsuch said you'd be better off applying fraud laws which are currently on the books. You don't need another one there if there's something that's being misled by what's going on in the centers. We'll have more to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. Welcome back to Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Carl Zarowski, Reverend Robert Cornegie, I forgot his name for a second, and then Dr. Bob Wilson. It's been a long week, guys. As we go into the this segment here today, this is something that has been most vice presidents we sort of kind of put off into the side. We don't really consider them a whole lot. I think maybe Cheney kind of broke the mold on that one, mold a little bit on that one too. But it'd be probably hard pressed to name everybody's vice president, even in our own lifetimes. But here we have a vice president in Mike Pence that has kind of stood very firm, both in his belief, his faith, and his support. The story is out of PJ Media. It says, liberals sure are worried about Mike Pence, written by Jim Treacher, and who used to write for Daily Caller. And it says, as an almost lifelong Hoosier, I'm proud to watch Mike Pence live his life a heartbeat away from the presidency. I was taken aback when Trump picked him, but if they flipped the ticket, I would have gladly voted Pence-Trump. Over the past year, Pence has won me over by showing a more presidential comportment than the actual president. As far as I'm concerned, Pence will make a fine POTUS in 4 to 8 years. And a lot of liberals seem to agree that it's a done deal because they can't stop shrieking about how awful he is. Then he runs down a litany of the things. At the Winter Olympics, how the media was going gaga over North Korea's Kim Jong because she, the dictator's sister, because she and Pence snubbed each other. And then the figure skater Adam Rippon, who spent much of his time talking about how he hates Pence, and then he didn't actually skate very well. And then there was George Behar talking about Pence being crazy about talking to God, which was a surgical strike of an insult, is what this is. The quote is from here, that targeted about 70% of America. And she eventually apologized there too, probably after talking with Oprah. But that was that was a litany, and that's only in the last few months. I mean, guys, this is a vice president who's under attack for something that may or may not happen from in another 3 to 8 years or 7 years.
One of the things that I remember reading is that Pence will not interview or talk to a woman without his wife present.
Right.
And the media crawled all over that.
Yes.
And I think that he's very smart, but that just totally makes sense. Why would you put yourself in a position where you could be tarred and feathered, basically.
Well, that was before the Harvey Weinstein thing.
Oh, I
You
know.
so-
But you see, that's so contrary to the way the culture is
Mm-hmm.
today that it like you're threatening us, the culture of today says, but Pence is as solid and good person that I can think of, and he is living out his faith. That today is very unusual.
Consider for a moment an interview between a female and the interviewer being Matt Lauer. Okay, there you see that there can be real problems between a male and a female alone in an interview. I get that, okay, but Pence took it so far as to say he wouldn't even eat lunch with just one other woman and just him. And that's smart. I mean, he's thinking like a Christian needs to think. He's showing himself to be human. Men are tempted by women. Women are tempted by men. Don't put yourself in a position where you may be tempted. And he's smart to do this, but yet he's ridiculed by the media for taking a strong moral stand.
Yeah, it really is a statement on where media is right now when that kind of behavior is just mocked and snarky, and his wife and daughter just wrote a book about their pet. They have a pet rabbit.
I
Yeah.
love the name.
Yeah.
Marlon
Brando.
Brando.
Right.
Yeah, and so now, they're just mocking that. In fact, somebody has written a book, a parody of that book, and where Pence is the villain and the rabbit is gay. I mean, this is how absurd it is. So when we do say the media, I mean, it is a section of the media that's going, they have literally gone into a over the top. I mean, it's crazy what's going on. But not only are we as believers we're to avoid sin. It goes beyond that. We're even to avoid the appearance
Yes.
The appearance
of
yes.
sin.
Right.
That's a whole other thing. That means somebody else who is watching us, they're looking not only for what could be sin, but they're looking at how we avoid sin. How we avoid even appearing as though we're sinning. And that's, the Billy Graham back in the 40s established that standard that Pence is talking about.
Right.
And of course, it comes right out of the scripture that we are to live a life that is above reproach.
Right. And Ben and I are both part of the same denomination, the conference, and we both have just gone through a required sexual ethics training that we go through every so many years. And a lot of that had to do with exactly what you're talking about. Not only avoiding the sin, obviously, but avoiding a situation where it could happen, and also avoiding any situation that could appear to be inappropriate in nature. It not only protects the clergy, it protects whoever the clergy is talking to. It protects the entire church. And, I, for one, I'm glad to see somebody a step away, one heartbeat away from the presidency, who's got that deep a sense of moral obligation, and who is that firm in sticking to his Christian faith and living it out.
One of the things that this article pointed out at the very beginning was that what the liberal community is afraid of here is, and they don't really point to the history, but if you look at the history, it's only been broken by a few. Most vice presidents run for president.
Right.
And so most do. Cheney was an exception. But most,
as was Spiro Agnew.
Well, he had a reason for not. But most do. And so, what happens then if he is the one who is the head of the ticket? They'll go crazy.
It's amazing, isn't it? In the scriptures, we're told as well to extend the benefit of the doubt, aren't we? In our relationships with other people. When we see something that we don't understand, that may have an appearance of confusion or evil or whatever you want to say, that we are to extend the benefit of a doubt. Well, that doesn't exist in modern media now.
It doesn't exist as far as the way modern media views the Christian, but as far as the way the modern media views those who are liberal, they can do anything they want, and they are never, ever called on it.
That's a great point.
They are never called on it. And I think the comment here, and it would be 10 times this if Pence ever ran for presidency, and I pray to God he would. They say a lot of liberals seem to agree that it's a done deal, him running for president, because they can't stop shrieking. That's an interesting word there. They can't stop shrieking about how awful he is. And given some of the really activist atheist organizations today, like Freedom from Religion Foundation and Americans United for Separation in Church and State, Pence is going to be up against a maelstrom as far as what he does. And that's unfortunate, because we need a good Christian leader up there. And he's going to be tarred and feathered the whole way through. But so far, I haven't seen any sign of his reacting to some of the things that have said to him.
Yeah. Even with so much that's gone on with Hollywood of accusations that are enough to crater careers, even with that, still you have someone like Pence who exactly exemplifies the way they should have behaved, and then he is still castigated for it.
Yeah. No, it is remarkable, isn't it, how our perceptions of this that Pence has been tainted just in his association with, Trump, and that he would even serve in the same administration with him. So that, that's a huge defect right there. Well, there's something wrong with the guy.
They're saying there's more something wrong because of his relationship with Jesus.
Yes,
that's true.
That's right.
He's crazy.
Yeah.
He's crazy because he talks to Jesus.
Well, he talks to the devil too, doesn't he?
I happen to be crazy about Jesus, and that's why I talk to Jesus.
Yeah. Well, and see, I think it was part at first. I think there's a bit of a pendulum here. That first, his association with Trump was just saying, how could he possibly do that? But now that he has an association that goes beyond that, that is his strongest association, as you were saying. Then that's even worse.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So Jesus is worse than Trump.
That's
what they're saying,
basically. Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah. Well, for a lot of them, honestly, Jesus
that's the truth.
Is a fairy tale.
Sure.
And so they're not. They just think this guy's.
But he's very real. But Pence is very real.
Yeah.
And so is Jesus.
So is Jesus.
That's right. Amen.
He's not a fairy tale.
More to come in a moment here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Robert Cornegie, also Reverend Carl Zarowski, and Dr. Bob Wilson. We'll be back in just a moment. Welcome back to Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And I'm Ben Ball, along with Carl Zarowski and Dr. Bob Wilson. And Robert Carnegie is with us, as always. What? What did you say? Chop liver over there?
Chop liver.
All right. And let's talk a little bit about the surprise of the movie season so far this year. It was the recently released, this is actually from Christian Headlines, Christian film I Can Only Imagine, a smashing success at the box office. A recently released Christian film I Can Only Imagine shocked critics this past weekend at the box office, bringing in $17.1 million, even though it was only shown at 1,629 locations. The film is based on the true story of the life of Bart Millard, the frontman of the Christian band Mercy Me. The film tells the story of how Millard came to write the smash hit I Can Only Imagine. Now, the film had been expected to bring in $2 and $8 million. It actually finished in third. Black Panther, the mega hit, was first. Tomb Raider, also another big hit, was second. And this film, I Can Only Imagine, came in third last weekend.
I'm curious, what was fourth?
I think A Wrinkle in Time was. It also,
Okay.
yeah.
So Jesus beat out Oprah Winfrey, is that right?
Mm-hmm. And A Wrinkle in Time, as it says here, a film that had been stripped of its Christian themes as it originally was intended in that movie. So here this is, a movie that has Michael Finley as Millard, and also Dennis Quaid in it too, and he plays Millard's father. This is just phenomenal to me that it would do that well, and it really probably has to do around the success, obviously, of the song. I Can Only Imagine. Just a wonderfully lyrically important song too, I think, and it struck a chord across genres. It was a #1 pop hit. So you have to think about, if this can happen with such an overtly Christian theme, what is the future of entertainment, of Christian-themed entertainment? Does it have a chance?
I think it's important to point out here, too, that the film cost them $7 million to make, and they were expecting to make between $2 million and $8 million. So they expected to lose money, maybe break even, maybe possibly make a little bit, and instead they made $10 million more
in the
than
first
what it cost
weekend
to make the movie.
In the
first weekend, only showing on 1,600 screens. That's pretty remarkable.
Yeah, isn't it amazing? That song, I Can Only Imagine, is I'm sure the most requested song within the Christian community now. When you're doing, whether you're in church or in any setting,
karaoke even.
Yeah, I mean, it is so powerful. And so just that, like you said, just that was, you talk about name recognition and bringing people in. And it was interesting that Dennis Quaid, I saw an interview with him, and he said, I had never heard the song. And said, but when they handed me the script, I knew I had to play the father.
Well, this is at least his second Christian-based movie, because he was in Soul Surfer as well, which had real strong Christian theme to it. And I see this as, that it's done well not only because of the popularity of the song. And I have to admit, the very first time I heard that song on the radio, I almost had to pull off the road to hear it. It was just incredible.
Yeah, I went back and looked it up and listened to it again and again.
Yeah, I'm thinking that this also points to the fact that people are looking for something different now. Yes. People are hungry for something other than just the sex and violence and action and fantasy that we're subjected to. And I'm not going to say subjected to, but that we are offered on the big screen,
and we often
choose. And we choose.
Right.
We choose. And I'm like the rest of them. New Star Wars movie came out. Yeah, I was there to see it, and it was amazing. But I think that people are hungry.
Yeah.
There's a real spiritual hunger in the country right now.
Dr. Bob is the one of us that have seen it.
Well, I think that the thing that I saw, and I'm going to go, we went over to Bear Creek Cinema over in Newbern, and it's not a particularly large theater, but by today's standards, about average. On Tuesday night, 6:10 show, and that theater was filled by the time the movie started. I mean, except for the first couple of rows. So Lynn and I were sitting in the back of the theater, and just on the outside on the aisle, and a couple came in, and there were two seats right to our right by the wall. Well, this couple came in, and she kind of squeezed between us, and then the husband had a large container of soda. Well, I offered to take it from him. He gave it to me gladly, thanked me, and sat, and he went in to do something else. But I was looking at the composition of the audience. Now, if they weren't all Christians, it certainly seemed that way because the level of politeness, the level of conversation, the level, there was life there. And that's one of the things that this movie has. It's not preachy by any stretch of the imagination, but it is full of life. And it's full of forgiveness, and that is so, so, so important in today's age.
You know, we have watched Christian-themed entertainment change and evolve over the years, and you know, attracting better audiences, but also being better produced, having better acting, directing, writing, all of the elements of a movie. I mean, you used to get Christian-themed movies that we get that would be shot on one camera in an outdoor set because they couldn't afford a set, and it'd be very contrived kind of plot. And now you have, and I think a lot of it, I give a lot of credit to, what is the church in Georgia that did the independent films?
That's right.
And give a lot of credit to them and their vision they saw. And there's had some hokey stuff, moments as well, too, but they kind of lit the fire, I think, that said, let's do better movies now. Now you have coming out this weekend is The Apostle Paul. Yeah. And that's a big production movie. We'll see where it goes in terms, Jim Caviezel is in it. We'll see where it goes in terms of also having any kind of resonation with, does it resonate with the audience? Because we have seen some other Hollywood treatments of Noah, for example, that didn't do so well. So they're not always going to be good.
You know, you're for the theme of this movie, you know, kind of the plot line of it is just so powerful. It touches every one of us. We've all seen that breakdown in that generational relationships and how hard it is to live through that and the consequences that have affected our culture as marriage has fallen apart as the institution of community and of life and the basic core of who we are. And so to have this kind of, I don't want to, you know, we all know it has a good ending, so because we've heard the song, but you know, to be able to rejoice in what has it's hard to find that today. It's hard, and most TV shows and others, there are a few that play it reasonably well, but most of them don't know how to deal with it.
I think in this particular movie, the anger, because it was an abusive relationship, and the anger that was there that drove Bart Milland eventually dissipated, and it changed. Now, when they had the
spoiler alert,
right? Yeah, when they had the when they sang the song at the end, it would have been a powerful song. Everybody would go, yeah, we'll love it to pieces. But the lead up to that, there was not a person in that house that was not either choked up or visibly crying. I mean, they were shedding tears, and that is amazing because it got to who they are, their heart.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what else I think.
Worry
is
about
amazing.
doing an ugly cry there.
With this whole discussion, what has hit me, I think, the hardest was your story about the soft drink. Okay, about the soft drink. Yeah. You know, that you said, I'll hold this for you. And the guy's like, sure. And he handed it to you. And then he went, and it was, you know, so often today, people we don't know, there's a lack of trust there. Okay, but as you said, you didn't know if everybody in the theater was Christian. Could have been. But you had these people who everybody was there together. There was a sense of community. There was a sense of belonging. There was a sense of trust. And, you know, that's something that's really lacking in our society. And praise God that there's movies coming out like this that will bring those people of like mind together, and they can go out in public, and maybe the rest of the world can see that and say, look at how those people live together. I want some of that for myself.
You know, it's interesting that there's another movie about to be released as well. It's The God's Not Dead 3. in the series.
Yeah, we've got an interview coming up on our Coastal Daybreak with the guy who plays the pastor in all three movies. Yeah, so there are some good ones coming out, and what a wonderful thing to see, and yeah, but this tracks along with if we look at Christian music, for example. I mean, we've always had genres of Christian music: Southern gospel, black gospel, all the things that fall in the gospel line. But the contemporary Christian music is a relatively new genre of popularity, but it also has improved in production values and improved as it's become more popular, and still having a message. Some of it's weaker than others, obviously, and some of these movies will be that way too. But it's important that we see that Christians accept that they can be in the marketplace and influence the marketplace in a positive way.
Support it. We really need to support these opportunities.
And welcome back to Faith Matters here on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240. And thanks for joining us here on this, this is a Palm Sunday morning when this is originally broadcast anyway. So we thank you for joining us here. I'm Ben Ball, along with Reverend Robert Carnegie, also Dr. Bob Wilson, and Reverend Carl Zarowski. Our Sign of the Apocalypse, which is usually our final segment, comes from what was originally an idea floated in the Navy that said maybe we should have atheist chaplains. This is originally from Christian Post. It says, if there aren't atheists in foxholes, why should we put them in chaplain corps? Senator Roger Wicker of Massachusetts can't imagine. Like most leaders, he's astounded that the Navy is even considering letting someone who doesn't believe in God join the chaplaincy. 3 years ago, the idea was so absurd that even Obama's military attorneys went to court to stop it. Now with Secretary Jim Mattis at the helm, no one can quite understand why the topic is even up for discussion. But apparently the bizarre storyline started in 2015. I think it was actually earlier than that. Jason Heap tried to sue his way into the chaplaincy. Not surprisingly, the Navy rejected him because he planned to associate with two humanist groups instead of an actual religious denomination. Eventually, though, what we see about bad ideas, when they hang around long enough, they start to look better to some people. So there was actually a commission that began to look at that and look at the possibility of having the Navy agree to have atheist chaplains. All right, who wants to jump in on the absurdity?
I'll do it. I just read this sentence. I'm just astounded.
Get your microphone down there, please.
Oh, that microphone. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. It said that the sentence, the application of Jason Heap, who was backed by the Humanist Society, was first rejected by the Navy in 2014. But a Navy Chaplain Advisory Board recently recommended approving it. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm just a Navy Chaplain Advisory Board. I'm assuming that advisory board was composed of Navy chaplains. Is that good? Maybe former Navy chaplains?
It's possible. But having worked with North Carolina State Parks, and we had advisory boards at all of our parks, those were not former rangers or former park employees.
Who were they?
Okay. Well, a lot of them were people who just had a very great interest and a very great love in that particular park. So I'm just saying they could be chaplains. They could just be other people that were put together. They could just be campaign
contributors.
That's right. They could just be other people who were put together to help resolve this issue.
So you stack your advisory boards if you want to get these things pushed through.
That happens all the time.
That goes way back, doesn't it?
That never happened.
Well, I think one of the things, too, that struck me about this is that the individual, Jones, I think his name was, he was backed by the Humanist Society. Mm-hmm. And going back to the Freedom from Religion Foundation, American Separation for United Church and State, and also the ACLU, if the Navy had just, flat out turned down this application, no way, they'd be open for a lawsuit, and it would be a long and costly thing. So it would be better to say, okay, we're We're not going to get into that. And especially if the advisory board were not made up of people who believed, chaplains, then let's not go down that road. Let's not open ourselves up to all of this. Let's just do it.
Well, I think you're actually. I think one of the reasons to bring this up now, there is an update to this story, is that it was rejected by that board, or not. I don't know. Actually, not by the board. It was rejected by the Navy.
Right.
The board had recommended it. Is that it will come back? That's what I was saying about bad ideas that hang around long enough, they start to look better to some people, and so this bad idea is going to come back. And there's no doubt that we'll have some sort of that. But so we were trying to imagine here, actually around the studio, we were trying to imagine, what would an atheist chaplain do? What would they somebody coming to looking for comfort, and what would they say? He says, don't ask me. I can't give you any, maybe here's the logic says you're in a heap of trouble.
Well, I admire the people who go into the chaplaincy.
Oh, yeah.
Because with their faith, if they believe in Jesus and somebody comes to them who is a Buddhist who is in need, they need to be able to minister to that person.
Right.
And it's very rare, I think, in the life of a chaplain that somebody calls on you because something wonderful has happened.
Right.
No, the chaplain is called when things are bad, and so they have a very, very difficult life. And Ben, I don't have an answer as to what the atheist chaplain would say.
I just figured they'd have the magic 8-ball around, and they'd turn it up and upside down, and it would say, "No, not at this time."
No, well, what you would say, because I used to do counseling before I became a Christian, you would say, "Well, what do you think you should do?"
Yeah,
because it all depends on what you think about what's going on. And so because there is no higher authority to appeal to. I thought this was a fascinating statement too. Is that this is one of the congressmen that pushed back on this. He's on the Senate Armed Services Committee. Yeah, Wicker. And he said the appointment of an atheist to an undeniably religious position is fundamentally incompatible with atheism's secularism. Isn't that brilliant?
Yeah.
So he called him out. He said, why in the world would a non-religious secularist want to be involved in an organization that is religious at its core? And, it's amazing, isn't it, what the world has come to. They deny God and then borrow their moral foundation from him.
But here's one person, this Jason Heap, who sued, who came back, who's made this case.
One person.
Yeah, and I'm telling you, I think you could mark it down and say in a number of years, he's going to be back there enough.
Yeah,
Someone's going to say, okay, all right, you can take the office down on the right.
Well, if you ever read the Humanist Manifesto, they go through. There was a book that was written in the 50s, I think, 40s or 50s, and they go very specific. They have a dogma and doctrine. It's very specific about the
role of reason,
yeah, and of science.
Well, that goes back to, though, one of the things I said in the book is the American Secular Union, formed in 1885. And that was based on secularism, which was just coming into being at that point. And that all goes back to how everything can be solved by human reason and the highest standards of human reason. All morals depend on the highest standards of human reason. Human reason can solve everything. Spiritually, the human being is made to be an idol, a very powerful idol. But that still carries over today in postmodernism and all the other things that say that you don't need God.
Well, it's fascinating, isn't it, that in the pre-modern era, if you will, the position was that truth was a source of truth was revelation from God and reason. Yes. That you had both.
Right. Right, they're in
And
conflict.
then modernism came along, and modernism said, no, we don't have revelation anymore. All we have is reason. And now postmodernism has come along and said, no, we don't have revelation anymore. We don't have reason anymore. All we have are feelings, how you perceive the truth, not based on reason or revelation.
That's right. It is only true if it is true to you. We talked about that the other week with the Scientology.
That's exactly right. It's not true if you don't believe it.
And I came across a quote this week from an old movie called 12 Monkeys, which I've never seen, but I'd like to check it out. And the quote was, there is no right, there is no wrong, there is only popular opinion. Okay.
Yeah, well, see, that's it, isn't it? That's our culture.
That's our culture.
Yeah, that's right. That's the tenets of our culture. Yeah.
There's an article I came across this morning. Didn't have time to distribute it, but I will. And that is that the whole shtick, the whole thing about Silicon Valley and artificial intelligence, that's where we don't count on anything. You know, artificial intelligence can do everything for us. We don't have to think about it. And besides, who are we anyway? You know, so.
And for the secular humanist, this is so 70s and 80s that this guy is hanging on and trying to defend secular humanism, because secular humanism has been literally, it's gone. It's, you know, in modern academia today, secular humanism is not the dominant worldview. Postmodernism is the dominant worldview. Modernism is no longer. I mean, it may be in some of the sciences and stuff like that, but when you look at the philosophy department and all the humanities and the English and everybody else, it's all, there is no revelation, there is no reason, there's only feeling.
All right, well, we're going to have to wrap it up here on Faith Matters on the Talk Station, FM 107 and AM 1240, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you for joining us for Faith Matters. Email your comments, questions, and suggestions to faithmatters@thetalkstation.com.
Give me faith, trust what you say, that you're good and your love is great. I'm broken inside, I give you my life. Give me faith.
Faith Matters is a production of the Talk Station.